There is a specific, heavy kind of silence that fills a room after an apology is accepted too quickly. Have you noticed that? It is not the silence of peace or resolution. It is the silence of something being swept under the rug. It is a moment where one person feels a wave of relief because they escaped consequences, and the other person feels a strange, sinking weight in their chest, the weight of a betrayal that was swallowed whole just to keep the peace. Why is it that the most generous acts of forgiveness are so often met not with gratitude, but with an escalation of disrespect? It is a confusing paradox that many women find themselves trapped in. There is a common observation that when a woman extends grace to a man who has hurt her, expecting it to be a bridge to a better relationship, he often treats it like a permit to behave even worse. Why does compassion, when given freely, start to look like permission to him? Why does the person who was saved from the wreckage of his own bad behavior eventually come to resent the very hand that pulled him out? These are not just questions about bad relationships. They are questions about the fundamental nature of power and human psychology. We are taught that love is patient, that love is kind, and that to forgive is divine. But there is a darker side to this virtue. There is a point where mercy stops being a gift and starts being a poison. We need to look at this through the lens of Maya Angelou, a woman who understood trauma, resilience, and the absolute necessity of self-respect. She famously said, "When people show you who they are, believe them the first time." Yet, how often do we ignore that first showing? How often do we look at a red flag and paint it white in the name of potential or understanding? We live in a culture that conditions women to be the healers, the fixers, the ones who are expected to absorb the emotional impact of a man's immaturity and transmute it into stability. It is an exhausting role. It is the role of the emotional shock absorber. If you look around, you see brilliant, capable women who are exhausted not by their careers or their ambitions, but by the sheer effort of carrying the emotional load for two people. This exhaustion is real. It is not a sign of weakness. It is a symptom of carrying a burden that was never yours to carry. It is the fatigue of constantly trying to love someone into being a better version of themselves, only to find that your patience has been weaponized against you. You are not crazy for feeling used. You are not wrong for feeling that your kindness has been taken for granted. In fact, your instincts are screaming the truth that we are going to uncover today. We are going to dissect the psychological mechanism behind why forgiving too soon destroys respect. We are going to look at why your tolerance is actually subsidizing his bad behavior. This is not about becoming bitter or cold. It is about reclaiming your sovereign power. It is about understanding that true love cannot exist without respect, and respect cannot exist without boundaries. We are going to use the wisdom of Maya Angelou not just as poetry, but as a strategy for survival and thriving. If this resonates with that quiet voice in the back of your mind that knows you deserve more than breadcrumbs of affection, then take a moment right now. Subscribe to the channel. It is a small action, but it is a signal to yourself that you are ready to stop settling and start rising. Join us in this space where we value truth over comfort. Now let's begin by dismantling the illusion that your forgiveness is free. It costs you everything. Let's talk about the economy of relationships. Every interaction, every gesture, and every compromise has a value. There is a painful reality that many generous souls face. You give gold, and you receive dust in return. You offer understanding. You offer a safe harbor. You offer a clean slate immediately after a betrayal. And yet, you feel invisible. It seems that the more understanding you become, the less he seems to see you. Why does this happen? It happens because human beings, particularly those operating on immature power dynamics, value what is scarce. They value what they have to earn. When forgiveness is handed out like a flyer on a street corner, it loses its value. If you treat your forgiveness as something cheap, he will treat your pain as something irrelevant. Maya Angelou taught us a fundamental law of human interaction. You teach people how to treat you. This is a hard pill to swallow because it places the responsibility back in your hands, but it is also empowering. Every time you accept a hollow apology without a change in behavior, you are teaching a lesson. You are teaching him that his actions have no real cost. You are teaching him that he can disrespect you, ignore your needs, or break your trust, and the only price he has to pay is 5 minutes of awkward conversation before everything goes back to normal. Think of it like inflation in an economy. If a government prints too much money, the currency becomes worthless. You need a wheelbarrow of cash just to buy a loaf of bread. In your relationship, if you print too much forgiveness, if you flood the market with your mercy, your currency of self-respect crashes. Your no loses its power. Your anger loses its weight. He stops fearing the loss of you because you have proven, time and again, that you are not going anywhere. He learns that your boundaries are actually just suggestions. He learns that your threats of leaving are just bluffing. And what happens to a man when he realizes there are no walls to stop him? He pushes further. He takes more territory. He stops trying to impress you or keep you and starts doing the bare minimum required to keep you quiet. This is the pain of devaluation. It is not that you aren't worthy. It is that you have lowered the price of access to your soul so much that he thinks it is free. We must confront an uncomfortable truth here. Many women believe that their infinite patience is a virtue. They wear their tolerance like a badge of honor, thinking, I am a good woman because I stay. I am a good woman because I forgive. But in this context, infinite patience is not a virtue. It is a lack of boundaries disguised as sainthood. It is fear dressed up as love. By forgiving him before he has done the work to earn it, you are subsidizing his immaturity. You are paying the bill for his emotional development, and he is enjoying the ride. Why would he grow up? Why would he change? You have made it perfectly comfortable for him to remain exactly as he is. Being nice in the face of disrespect is not kindness. It is self-betrayal. And the world, tragically, does not reward people who betray themselves. It exploits them. There is a very specific trap that has been set for women in modern culture, especially in America. It is the myth of the ride-or-die woman. We see it in movies, we hear it in rap lyrics, we see it celebrated on social media. It is the image of a woman who sticks by her man through everything, through the cheating, the lying, the instability, the disrespect. She is praised for her loyalty. She is validated for her endurance. She is the cool girl who never complains and always understands. But let's look at what this myth really is. It is a scam. It is a cultural narrative designed to exploit female labor and emotional resilience. It glorifies suffering. It tells you that the depth of your love is measured by how much pain you are willing to endure. If you walk away, you are labeled disloyal or high maintenance. If you stay and suffer, you are a good woman. This narrative keeps you locked in a cage of toxicity, believing that your martyrdom will one day be rewarded with a trophy. But there is no trophy for losing yourself. Maya Angelou offered a radically different perspective. She spoke of a self-love that is possessive in the best possible way. She said, I belong to myself. This is a revolutionary statement. You do not belong to your partner. You do not belong to the relationship. You belong to you. And because you belong to yourself, you have a duty to protect yourself. You cannot love a man into treating you well if he does not love himself enough to be a good man. You cannot be the ride or die for someone who is driving the car off a cliff. That isn't loyalty. That is suicide. The ride or die myth tries to convince you that you should be a doormat, a welcoming, soft place where he can wipe his feet no matter how dirty they are. But a sovereign woman is not a doormat. She is a gate. Think about the difference. A doormat is on the ground. It has no agency. It accepts whatever steps on it. A gate stands upright. A gate has a lock. A gate opens to those who are welcome and worthy, and it remains firmly shut to those who threaten the sanctuary of the home. You must stop trying to be the welcoming doormat and start becoming the discerning gate. The truth about enabling is harsh but necessary to hear. By staying, by forgiving repeatedly without change, you are not being loyal to him. You are being an accomplice to your own destruction. And in a twisted way, you are an accomplice to his stagnation. You are rewarding the very behavior that hurts you. You are training him to be a worse version of himself. Real loyalty is not blind submission. Real loyalty is holding someone to a standard of excellence. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and even for him, is to refuse to participate in the toxicity. It is to step off the ride. It is to say, I love myself too much to watch you destroy us. That is not betrayal. That is the ultimate act of integrity. Have you ever wondered why, after a major conflict where you eventually forgave him, his behavior didn't just return to normal, but actually escalated? This is not accidental. This is the psychology of permission. When a boundary is crossed and the result is no consequence, the brain registers that the boundary never really existed in the first place. Imagine a line in the sand. He steps over it. He waits for the explosion. Maybe there is an argument. Maybe there are tears. But eventually, you embrace him. You take him back. You cook dinner. You sleep in the same bed. His brain records a very specific data point. I can cross that line, and I will still have access to her. Once that data point is established, the line moves. Next time, he pushes a little further, and if forgiveness comes again, the line moves again. This is why the bad behavior gets worse. It is a pattern of escalation rooted in behavioral psychology. If the boundary is flexible, it is not a boundary. It is just a suggestion, and suggestions can be ignored. We need to dive deeper into Maya Angelou's principle. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. Why is this so hard for us to do? Why do we prefer the comfortable lie over the painful truth? It is because we fall in love with potential, not reality. We fall in love with who he could be or who he was in the beginning, rather than who he is, showing us he is right now. When he acted with cruelty, that was his truth. That was his character manifesting in real time. When he apologized later, saying, I didn't mean it, or I'll change, that was often a manipulation to regain control and comfort. But we want to believe the apology because it aligns with our hope. We want to believe the words because the actions hurt too much to accept. Think of the broken mirror analogy. The trust in the relationship is like a mirror. When he breaks it, the glass shatters. You can spend hours, days, years trying to glue those pieces back together with your forgiveness. You might even succeed in assembling it into a shape that looks like a mirror. But when you look into it, your reflection will always be fragmented. It will always be distorted. You will never see yourself clearly in that relationship again. You will always be looking through the cracks of past betrayals. Stop trying to see a perfect future in a cracked reality. The confrontation you need to have is not just with him, but with yourself. He isn't changing because he doesn't have to. He has no incentive to change. The environment you have created, one of endless second chances, is perfectly designed for his comfort and your suffering. You have made it comfortable for him to disrespect you. Until the pain of losing you becomes greater than the pleasure of disrespecting you, nothing will shift. He needs to feel the cold draft of your absence. He needs to realize that access to you is a privilege, not a right. If you are realizing right now that you have been holding on to a broken mirror, cutting your hands trying to fix it, hit the like button. Let it be a digital promise to yourself that you are done bleeding for a reflection that will never be whole again. We have talked about the why, but now we must address the what stops us. If we know forgiveness is backfiring, if we know we are being devalued, why do we stay? What is the invisible chain? It is almost always the fear of the void, the fear of walking away. It is a scarcity mindset that whispers, is half a love better than no love at all? This fear is primal. It is the terror of loneliness. It is the worry that you might be too old, too complicated, or too damaged to find something real. So you cling to the scraps. You accept the bad behavior because the alternative, silence, an empty bed, starting over, feels like a death sentence. But this is where Maya Angelou's spirit must be invoked. Think of her poem, Still I Rise. It is an anthem of resilience. It is the voice of a woman who knows that her value does not depend on who is standing next to her. The power of a woman who is not afraid to be alone is the only power that a disrespectful man truly fears. Why? Because he cannot manipulate a woman who is happy in her own company. He cannot threaten a woman with abandonment if she has already built a beautiful home within herself. When you are terrified of losing him, he smells it. It is a scent on your skin. He knows he can push you, disrespect you, and ignore you. And you will stay because you are more afraid of the world without him than you are of the pain with him. He leverages your fear against you. We need to embrace the metaphor of the phoenix. The phoenix cannot rise until it burns. You must be willing to let the relationship turn to ash if it is toxic. You must be willing to burn the bridge to light your way forward. The death of the relationship is often the birth of your self-respect. It requires a shift in perspective. Solitude is not a punishment. It is a palace. It is a space where you can hear your own thoughts, where you can heal without being re-injured every day. The hard truth is this: the moment you are truly willing to lose him, the moment you look at him and think, I will be fine, and actually, I might be even better without this chaos, that is the moment you gain your power back. He senses it when the dynamic shifts. He senses when you stop needing him for your survival. That is usually the only time a man like that wakes up. But by then, for the sovereign woman, it is often too late. And that is okay, because you haven't just walked away from a man. You have walked back to yourself. So, how do we move forward? How do we stop this cycle? We must plant our feet in a new standard: sovereignty. First, we must redefine forgiveness. We have been taught that forgiveness means reconciliation. It does not. Forgiveness is something you do for you, in the privacy of your own heart, to release the poison of anger so it doesn't make you sick. Reconciliation, letting him back into your life, is a completely different transaction. Forgiveness is free. Trust must be earned. Reconciliation requires changed behavior over time. You can forgive him for breaking your heart, and still determine that he never gets access to it again. We need to wear the crown of self-worth. Think of Maya Angelou in her later years. Think of the way she spoke, the way she moved. She didn't ask for respect. She commanded it simply by existing. She didn't explain herself. She didn't chase. She had a gravity to her. She once said, "My mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style." To thrive means you do not tolerate environments that suffocate you. You embody the energy of someone who knows her worth is non-negotiable. This brings us to the distinction between a wall and a boundary. When we are hurt, we often build walls. Walls shut everyone out. They come from a place of fear and trauma. I will never trust again. That is a wall. A boundary, however, is different. A boundary is specific. It defines what is sacred territory. It says, you can come this close, but if you speak to me with disrespect, the interaction ends. Building a boundary is not an act of war against him. It is an act of self-preservation for you. It is protecting your peace as if it were a tangible asset, because it is. You are the guardian of your own soul. If you don't guard the gates, who will? The final lesson in sovereignty is the concept of the walk-away position. In any negotiation, business, political, or romantic, the person who is willing to walk away has the most power. If you cannot walk away, you are not negotiating. You are begging. You must cultivate the inner strength, the financial independence, and the emotional resilience to know that if the terms of the relationship do not meet your standards, you can pack your bags. This isn't a threat you make to him. It is a promise you keep to yourself. When you live by this code, you stop attracting men who want to exploit your weakness, and you start attracting men who respect your strength. We have traveled a long way in this conversation. We started by looking at the trap of mercy, the confusion of why your goodness was backfiring. We walked through the economy of respect, debunked the ride or die myth, and faced the psychology of permission. Now, we stand at the threshold of a new identity, the sovereign woman. I want to share something with you. Years ago, I was the woman who forgave everything. I was the woman who thought that if I just loved harder, if I just proved I was low maintenance and endlessly understanding, eventually he would see my value. I remember the night it broke. I remember looking in the mirror and not recognizing the tired, anxious woman staring back at me. I realized I had set myself on fire to keep him warm, and he was still complaining about the smoke. Walking away was the terrifying part, but the silence that followed wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. It was the sound of my own life coming back to me. You have a choice today. It is a real, tangible choice. You can keep doing what you have always done, forgiving, excusing, disappearing little by little until there is nothing left of you. You can keep waiting for him to magically change while you enable the very things that hurt you. Or you can stand up. You can decide that you are done being a casualty of your own kindness. You can decide that your love is a high-value currency that will no longer be spent on people who cannot afford it. If you have watched this far, I know which choice you want to make. But wanting it isn't enough. You have to claim it. So here is my challenge to you. If you are ready to stop being a participant in your own devaluation, I want you to go to the comments right now. Do not just leave a generic comment. I want you to declare your independence. Write this: I belong to myself. Let those 4 words be the first boundary you set today. Let them be a permanent record that you are done negotiating your worth. And if this video felt like a conversation you needed to hear, if it touched that bruised part of your spirit, then destroy that like button. Not for the algorithm, but as an act of agreement with your future self. Subscribe to this channel, not because I asked you to, but because you are building a new environment for your mind, and this is your headquarters. We have more work to do. There are 2 videos on the screen right now that will arm you with even more tools for this battle. One will challenge you, the other might just save you. Choose your next step wisely. I'll see you there, standing tall.